The double empathy problem. Dr. Damien Milton's theory of double empathy proposes that one group will always find it difficult to put themselves in the position of another group's experience because of their different experiences, and therefore will always find it difficult to empathise with each other. When looked at through the lens of autism, it makes the points that autistic people experience and express emotions, communicate and interact with others, form relationships and sense the world around us very differently to non-autistic people. It's not that autistic people don't have emotions or feel empathy, just that those things look different and are experienced differently. Those differences can make it difficult for non-autistic people to recognise the displays of emotions and empathy for what they are, because that's not how non-autistic people experience them, so they're interpreted incorrectly. If autistic people lack insight into non-autistic culture and social communication, it stands to reason that non-autistic people lack insight into autistic culture and social communication, meaning it's just as difficult for non-autistic people to understand and empathise with autistic people. This mutual lack of insight creates an empathy gap, a problem for both groups, a double problem. How it presents. The non-autistic ways of communicating and empathising are seen as the typical, expected ways. They're generally accepted as normal and correct. They're mainstreamed. The atypical, unexpected presentations of autistic communication and empathy are often rejected as different and incorrect. They're pathologised as wrong. So, while the empathy gap is experienced by both groups, there is inequality to the level of the impact it has on both groups. For non-autistic people, there is an assumption that their majority, familiar way of communicating and empathising is superior or preferable to the autistic way, and so the majority gets its way. Underpinning that is the misconception that autistic people are non-autistic people who have broken autistic bits that should be overcome or improved. It's created the expectation that autistic people must learn non-autistic culture and ways of communicating and empathising in order to be accepted into society. To reinforce this, behavioural trainings and frameworks based on rewards and punishments are often inflicted on autistic children and adults. Further, society insists on what it defines as social norms, unwritten rules that state all humans do things in a particular way, based on a non-autistic experience of the world. Autistic people are applauded and rewarded for not showing outward signs of being autistic. However, at no point are non-autistic people expected to understand, accept, or adopt autistic perspectives or autistic culture. The double empathy problem highlights that all of this is evidence of non-autistic people lacking empathy for autistic people, autistic experience, and autistic culture. The current state of play. This lack of empathy from the majority of society leads to autistic people being marginalised, stigmatised, and traumatised. Society deems itself inclusive, yet basic accommodations have to be fought for, or are often prescribed incorrectly. Natural autistic behaviours are pathologised. We are told that these need to be intervened with or corrected. Autistic people experience extreme levels of social isolation, interpersonal victimisation, poor mental health, poor access to healthcare, and high unemployment. Secondary to epilepsy, heart attacks, strokes, and suicide are the biggest killers of autistic people. Mental health services either exclude autistic people on the basis that poor mental health is a part of being autistic, or, conversely, lock us in mental health facilities on the basis of what is defined as challenging behaviour, ignoring the years of trauma from continuous unmet needs. Autistic people are forced to mask, a lifelong developmental trauma response grounded in stigma. The double empathy problem reframes the gap between non-autistic and autistic culture. It removes the current hierarchical model, centres our coexistence on reciprocity and mutuality, and identifies autistic people as the ones with greatest insight into autistic needs and being. It provides the opportunity for autistic people to be treated with equity and equality. It also highlights that currently, hypocritically, autistic people are having to do all